Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in for that talk. I want to talk to you today a little bit about the promise of data self-service, and that comes with it. We all know since ChatGPT came around, now everybody kind of expects to have access to all their files and all their information with just a couple simple prompts. And I want to tell you the story from the back end of how we actually are able to, with very, very little text, retrieve very powerful results, and the challenges that come with that, and the hurdles that we've encountered and the steps that we've taken in order to address this. Most of you already saw my 1-minute pitch, so I'm not going to go through this again. But basically, Aparavi originated with the promise of tackling the problem of unorganized, unstructured data growth, which is basically 40 years old, ever since we started using an interface and enabling everyday consumers to store unstructured data files on enterprise systems. The growth of unstructured data has been looking pretty much like this, right? So we had a very manual process. We start with a system and then the data just expands naturally into different data silos, different paths. And you can think about that yourself when you start storing stuff, when you get a new device and how it looks maybe a year later, of how distorted that looks. And now you can think about an enterprise system, how you might have your Azure Store, your Google Drive, your Outlook, your SharePoint, all these different data silos that hold so much valuable information for your organization. So we looked at that, and then we came to the conclusion that really what we need is a unified data catalog. A data catalog that understands unstructured data in terms of the permissions, the owners who own those files, is able to classify the content within the files, and ultimately provide you the analytics and automatically automate the monitoring for you then to perform the actions, like, for example, the preparation of data for the use case of AI. I'm going to walk you a little bit through the architecture of how we tackle this. This might not be the only way to do this, but we figured that this is the most secure and data-centric way of building a knowledge system for an enterprise use case. And the DNA of Aparavi has always been to be absolutely data-centric. So we start by leaving the data in place where you have it and always operating behind your firewall. So when we aggregate your data, we deploy single nodes to each of your data locations. Might that be your file shares, might that be your Windows, Linux, or Mac OS system, your cloud resources, as well as any other file storages that you have. And we deploy singular nodes that have their own intelligence within them locally to then aggregate information like the metadata of those files. We support over 1,600 different file types. Understand the keyword, the indexing, the actual content of those files, and then also providing semantic understanding to then make those files searchable by natural language. The way you do that really comes down to two components. So what you see here is the node architecture that I explained to you, that basically is deployed to wherever your data lives, and then the platform, which only aggregates the intelligence and therefore can be hosted in the cloud or on-premise, but while still maintaining that data privacy piece and giving you ultimately the opportunity to have an oversight and perform data actions like certain types of automations, migrations, or reduction on your data before you build your data catalogs that you can then ultimately use, for example, to build a powerful AI agent. The key benefits of these architectures are really that the data remains where it stays private to you alone, and ultimately you get the benefit of having structured data that is queryable, searchable, and really having that understanding of all the data that you have in your estate, and whether it's only having isolated file types like you have in many other search systems, if you only operate on Microsoft, if you only operate on Google, or if you only operate on AWS buckets, for example. And then, of course, as I showed you in the diagram before, we designed this entire system for enterprise scale, and that's really the promise. So let me just give you a quick little peek into how that really looks. I got a little sample repository here that has some OneDrive connected, an Outlook, SharePoint, a whole bunch of different files, and is then able to basically give analytics about how your data has been accessed, what's the projected growth of your data rate, what type of content do you have in your files, do you have sensitive information in there, who are the owners, do you maybe have people who have a large amount of permissions in your systems, maybe more than they're supposed to, When were your files created? When were they last modified? Do you have rotting data there that's not really used, or maybe by accident, maybe from backup systems being duplicated? So we aggregate all that information, and then we give you also the opportunity to act upon it. So we can detect your duplicates. We can also detect suspicious files that might have different MIME types than they are actually supposed to. So basically giving you an oversight of maybe having virus in your emails or any other warnings. But then ultimately, what we really want to empower you is by building data catalogs. And that's what we do here very easily is, for example, looking at a certain type of your system, we can understand maybe if you want to build a knowledge chatbot for a certain owner group, or a certain permissions group, you can do that very easily. Select an owner, look at all their files within split seconds, and then act upon that, export it into a different file system, maybe a SharePoint, or create a unified data catalog for that. The other big part is also for data privacy. Think about maybe you want to detect all the files that are classified under a certain act, maybe the GDPR, or maybe in this case, the United States sensitive data policy. So you locate all those files with ease, and then you can start either excluding or including them in your data catalogs that you then ultimately want to use to build with AI, to build those secure applications that are privacy-centric and don't expose you to any type of risks, like some of these scenarios that we've seen of too early deployed AI systems. So that's the quick overview of the data suite. A good product to have that data discovery experience, data optimization, and ultimately prep your data for AI. But circling back to the topic of the talk, is this now true data self-service? Probably not. Because in today's world, we don't really do that anymore. We don't click through user interfaces unless we are the architects and the administrators. A user doesn't want to go through a flow and locate the files like this, right? So we need something else. Who of you has heard about the model context protocols? Show of hands. 3. Okay, cool. At least I didn't put in that slide for nothing then. That's good. So for those of you who haven't heard about this, it's a new concept introduced by Anthropic, the company behind Claude, basically one of the major competitors against ChatGPT and OpenAI. The promise of this protocol is an interface for any LLM to interface with any tool. So the understanding is here now, instead of writing single API drivers, instead of writing any type of like custom software, you have a interfacing layer like a standard, like an ISO standard, that basically defines the rules for large language models for generative AI to interact with your tool. It's like a USB unified drive. You have these ones maybe at your docking station where you just put in everything, right? And you can imagine your Slack, your Gmail, your Google Calendar to be single servers. And then you have the ultimate MCP server that acts like a translation layer to your MCP host, to your client, which is then your large language model talking to it. So we built the same at Aparavi. And we basically let you use our data catalogs by the way of natural language. So instead of you having to write your own drivers or go through that query experience that I just walked you through, you can use, for example, Claude to do the same query that I just had here. Let me show you how it works. Got an interface here. There we go. So now I can use Claude here. It's running the data server in the back, the MCP server, and I can say, please use Aparavi to locate all the files in my system that are classified under the US, I think I did the data privacy, sensitive data policy. So what it goes now, it goes into that endpoint server, and it understands the APIs that we have inside the platform, and it formulates the query that I just had into actual syntax, as you can see here in the background, and then it executes that query, and it should come back to me with a result in just hopefully a couple seconds. That was the promise. There we go. Okay. So it located 127 files because it combined the sensitive data classification together with also looking for social security numbers. So that's a little bit more than the 64 that we have here, because it looked, I think, in the global system for that query. So you see that the protocol itself is not perfect. There's still a lot of ways to optimize. Here you can see now that's this number here. But it's certainly a huge leap for all of us in the way we interact with tools. The way we retrieve data has become so much more easy these days. What that also means, though, is that the bar has been raised for all of our applications. Let me ask this. Does that cover everything that we need to do in the age of AI? Does that really enable everyone to retrieve all the data in your enterprise system? And does that cover all your agentic AI use cases and all the things you really want to do with data? Arguably not. There are 280 million companies out there, according to Gartner, that are currently building AI projects. And 70 to 80% of them, at least in 2024, have failed to implement Gen AI projects because of many reasons. One of them, or many of them, is poor data quality. Another big one is the knowledge gap that we have in AI professionals that truly know these systems, that truly understand this relatively new, relatively novel concepts of generative AI, the vector databases, the knowledge graphs, the embedding models, and everything that comes with it. And let alone in Germany, I found that very interesting, is we are still searching for 250,000 more AI professionals as of today to help us build these systems. Because as you saw yourself, just within that demo here that I ran 3 times before coming here, it still gave me a different result than I expected. So there's still a lot of work to do, right? One of the reasons why these projects fail is because the system architectures for those custom chatbots, the AI agents, they look somehow something like this. You have your knowledge sources, you do some kind of extractions, you do a lot of different file type handling, you have some kind of custom code, you might integrate something like Llama index, LangChain along the way. Then you got to implement something around permission handling at least, because you probably don't want to point the chatbot at all your data and then make it public facing and make it retrieve, some sensitive contracts or sensitive other data that you just didn't think about because you deployed this at scale and the data just grew. There's a lot of, difficulties in parsing more complex PDFs from OCR systems to like legacy documents. I think especially here in Germany, we have a problem with our digitalization. We're still a little bit behind and still a lot of things are done on paper. Furthermore, there's an entire science behind the way we do chunking, the way we do embedding, and then the entire space develops so quickly that the embedding model that you thought was really, really good yesterday might not be so promising tomorrow anymore. It's already outdated, at least in 3 weeks from now. So walking into a lot of systems like this, when we try to provide our data quality service to companies, we realized that there was another gap that is really holding back the way we wanted data self-service and data retrieval to work at scale. And that's why we developed the data toolchain, which is the second product. I'm going to give you a gaze onto it. It's basically a complementary product we developed fitting into the data suite, which was what I showed you before. Basically, what we are trying to do here is making these entire system diagrams much, much more easy to build. So basically from creating your data catalog, making sure you have quality data in the input, now enabling you to build your chatbot, build your agent much, much faster, and removing some of the blockades, which are, doing the research of which tools I should use, doing the implementations, keeping track about having everything prepared to scale ultimately, which is what you want to do if you want to build a powerful AI application, right? Understanding which embedding models, which pre-processing steps you might want to do, and then ultimately also building retrieval systems that truly make a difference. If you are in the space, you probably know about some of the techniques that we use these days, like building, for example, summarizations of chapters and building then vector stores that contain, for example, summaries of chapters that limit basically the filtration space of queries. So all these, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but the promise of the tool is really to enable people to build their applications faster and not having to worry anymore so much about which model they're supposed to use, about how they can make their architecture scalable and how they get quality data into their applications easily. So yeah, that's the data toolchain. I think I hit all these points. It's a visual workflow builder. We use it for data ingestions, data processing, and integration with other AI applications and tools. That's really all I had for today for you. We are Aparavi. We help enterprise to access the information buried in their unstructured data at scale. My name is Hendrik. You can connect with me here on LinkedIn, or if you want to, all these tools are actually for free. We give them out as a very generous tier, so you can build your POC and see if this is of value for you. If you have some time, we have a booth downstairs. I'd love to chat with you about the data projects and the AI projects that you are building currently, and see if we can learn something from each other. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.